In 1421, the Ottoman Empire was on the verge of collapse. Rebellions within. Crusader armies outside. And on the throne, there was a young man, all alone. Everyone thought he would fail. But he didn't just save an empire, he closed an era. 1421. For the Ottoman Empire, it was not just the death of a sultan, but the beginning of a great test. The empire, recently brought back from years of internal wars known as the Fetret Devri, faced a new era with the passing of Cheleba Mehmet. He left behind a strong yet fragile structure. But this was more than a mere change of throne. It meant the potential resurgence of internal succession conflicts. And the pressure of Europe, eager to stop the Ottoman advance. At that time, the Ottoman Empire had no clear succession system. The throne belonged to the strongest. For a new sultan, the greatest threat was often his own family. And indeed, it happened. As soon as Murad ascended, his uncle Mustafa Cheleba rebelled. Soon, other claims appeared. From the very beginning, he had to fight both inside and outside. Yet these struggles did not weaken him. On the contrary, they hardened him. His era was one in which the Ottoman Empire constantly faced Europe. Crusader armies invaded Ottoman lands repeatedly. But Murad was not a ruler who only defended. He was active on the battlefield, strategic, and ruthless when needed. The Battle of Varna in 1444 is the clearest example of this determination. When the united European army attacked the Ottomans, many thought the empire would struggle. But in the end, the Ottomans prevailed. Then came 1448 and the Second Battle of Kosovo. This victory cemented Ottoman dominance in the Balkans. But victories had a hidden cost. Years of warfare. Constant threats. Bearing the weight of the state alone. Murad was exhausted. Truly exhausted. And he made a rare decision in Ottoman history. He abdicated. His successor was only 12 years old, Fatih Sultan Mehmed. This was not just an abdication. It was a strategy. Murad wanted his son to gain experience early. Europe, however, interpreted this differently. For them, the Ottoman Empire now had a young and inexperienced ruler. It was an opportunity. And it happened. The Crusader armies moved again. State officials worried. They thought young Mehmed could not bear this burden. And a historic message was sent to Murad. If you are the Sultan, come lead the army. If I am the Sultan, I command you, come. Murad returned. And resumed the throne. This event was not a step back for young Mehmed. It was one of the greatest lessons of his life. Born in Edirne in 1432, Mehmed was not raised like an ordinary prince. He received a strict, multifaceted education. Among his teachers was the prominent scholar Molla Guarani. This education was not only religious. Mathematics, astronomy, history, philosophy, and most importantly, languages. He knew Arabic, Persian, Latin, and Greek. This made him not just a fighting leader, but a thinking one. But what truly set him apart was not his knowledge, but his goal, Istanbul. Istanbul was not just a city at the time. It was a strategic center at the crossroads of East and West, controlling trade routes. But it was also nearly impregnable. It was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, standing for centuries. Protected by the three-layered Theodosius walls and from the sea by the massive chain across the Golden Horn. Many rulers had tried. All had failed. For this reason, only one word described Istanbul. Unconquerable. But Mehmed did not think so. In 1451, with Murat's death, Mehmed ascended the throne again. This time there was no turning back. He was no longer a prince, he was a ruler. And he was ready. The first step, preparation. He built the Rumeli fortress at the narrowest point of the Bosphorus to cut off external aid to Byzantium. Then came the weapons. The largest cannons of the era were cast. The goal was clear: break the walls. In April 1453, the siege began. Conquest of Istanbul was no longer a dream. It was a process. Days passed. Cannons fired. But the walls resisted. This was not a war of strength. It was a war of patience. And the greatest obstacle was at sea. The chain at the entrance of the Golden Horn blocked the Ottoman fleet. At this point came one of the most brilliant moves in history. The ships were transported over land. Through the night, on greased logs, the ships were moved, and by morning, they were inside the Golden Horn. For Byzantium, this was not just a surprise. It was a turning point. The city was now besieged from within as well as outside. The balance shifted. On the morning of May 29, 1453, the final assault began. After hours of fighting, Ottoman soldiers breached the walls. The city fell. Constantinople was now in Ottoman hands. This was not just the conquest of a city. An era had ended. The Middle Ages came to a close. The early modern period began. Fatih Sultan Mehmet was no longer just a ruler. He was a leader who changed the course of history. But to understand him, one must look beyond the conquest. His mindset matters. In the Ottoman Empire, the continuity of the state was more important than individuals. Hence, strict measures were applied to prevent succession conflicts. Under Mehmed, this approach became systematic. The law of fratricide. Today it may seem harsh. But at the time, it was seen as a solution to prevent the fragmentation of the state. Mehmed was not just a conqueror. He was a system builder. He was a system builder. And what made him exceptional? Was not just taking a city, but closing an era. And now only one question remains: if a person, raised from childhood with such a goal, can turn it into reality, where do true limits begin?